The first thing I'm going to look at here is a question from Principles of Mathematics 9. The question is, the mean of a list of n numbers is 6. When the number 17 is added to the list, the mean becomes 7. What is the value of n? Okay, so we have a question here about mean. Mean is the average of a bunch of numbers. So the formula for mean is just taking the sum of all those numbers. If you have 5 different numbers, you add up all those numbers and you divide them by the number of numbers. So there's 5 numbers, so you take that total sum, you divide it by 5, and there you have the average, the mean. Mean is the total sum of numbers divided by the number of numbers. So that's true, that's what we know. What is happening in this question? Well, first thing that is really good to look out for is, first of all, what you are looking for. So you're looking for the value of n. And what does n represent? N represents the amount of numbers that there are. So with mean, you take the total sum, you divide it by an amount of numbers, that gives you the mean. We don't know how many numbers there are. We don't know what n is. Okay. So we have a scenario, we have a situation here. We have situation 1, where we've got a mean, which is 6. We've got a bunch of numbers, and we also have that total sum. We just don't know what it is. And then situation 2, things change. So this is really important because what's happened is the situation has changed. We now have situation 2, where 17 has been added to that list of numbers, and the mean has changed. So that means that also the total sum would change. So the total sum has changed, that it's become a new total sum. We have a new amount of numbers and we have a new mean. And the question is, can you find the value of n? So right from the beginning, you've got 2 different situations and you've got a change, and that can be very helpful. So we don't have to do any math right now. We can just look at what's going on. In situation 1, we had the total sum, we had it divided by a bunch of numbers, we don't know what they are, and that equals the mean. And that's just a good formula to have right at the beginning. That's what happens in situation 1. In situation 2, we have a new total sum, and a new amount of numbers, and a new mean. So we've got situation 1 and situation 2. How can these help us find what n is? Well, let's move on. First of all, it's really good to ask yourself in these questions, what do you know? So what do we know? We have things from the first situation that have changed in the second situation. Since they have changed, they give us information. That's really important. Things have changed. And once things change, you are given information, because information changes these things. Suppose you once had an unopened present in a box. A ribbon is then added to the box. You still don't know what's in the box, but the present now equals box plus a ribbon. So you could say that in the beginning, you just had a mysterious box. You didn't know what was inside, but then you had a little ribbon added onto it. You still don't know what's in the box, so we could say the gift or the present equals the box plus the ribbon. So this is just an example to show you that when something changes, it now becomes what it has just changed to. So the gift was something, the gift was a box, but now the gift is a box plus a ribbon. It's like if you see someone and you don't know who they are. They're an unknown person. They're an unknown person. So first they are unknown, they're an unknown person, but then they put on a hat. Now, whoever they are, this unknown thing, is a person plus a hat. Okay, so that's just an example to illustrate that it's really good to focus on things when they change, because that gives you information. So moving on. Therefore, we know the new total sum. So let's go back to the very beginning here. We had the first situation, total sum, We didn't know it, we had n, we don't know it, and we had the mean, which was 6. Situation 2, we had a new total sum, which was changed from situation 1. We had a new amount of numbers, which has been changed from situation 1 as well, and a new mean. The new mean is 7. We do know that. So we actually do know the new total sum, and we know the new n, the new number of numbers, and we know the new mean because they gave it to us. But the main thing is we know what they are because they have changed from the original values. And that means we can plug in these new things to find n. So let me just recap some things here. The new total sum is just the original total sum plus 17, right? Because all they said in the question was the number 17 is added to the list. So that means you have all these numbers added up, and the new total sum is just all those original numbers, the sum of those numbers plus 17. So that means the new total sum is the original total sum plus 17. The new n will just be n plus 1. We know that in the first situation we had n, we didn't know what it was, but we added a new number. We added 17 to the list, which means we are adding one more number, so it's just n plus 1. The amount of numbers in situation 2 is n plus 1. And we know the new mean is 7, so that's really nice because we actually have like a concrete value for the new mean. Okay, so this should make sense, and this should be a true statement. The new total sum actually equals the original total sum plus 17. That is correct. So I can actually take my formula from the second situation, and I can plug in what I already know. So the new mean and the new n, we'll get to those, but we know that the new total sum is just the original total sum plus 17. That's really nice. Now we have a number in here. That's very nice. That's very helpful. Okay, I can do the rest. We know that the new n is going to be n plus 1, right? Because we're just adding another number to the list. We're adding 17, so therefore we're adding one more number to the amount of numbers that we had. And we know the new mean. So there we go. Total sum plus 17 divided by n plus 1 equals 7, because 7 was the new mean in situation 2. So we're good. We're at a very good part here. But we can't solve it yet because we still don't know the original total sum. So actually this question is difficult because you don't know the original total sum. You actually have to find that first. You have to do that in order to solve this equation and find n. Okay, so the total sum, the original total sum, we don't know it. We know that the new total sum, the new sum is the original one plus 17. That's what we've got here. We can't solve this equation for n yet because we still have this unknown. We can't have these two different unknowns here. So we have to solve for total sum. How do we do that? Well, we go back to our original situation. We had total sum divided by the amount of numbers equals the mean. Okay, so plug in what you know. Let's go back. What do we know? We know that there's a bunch of numbers and the mean is 6. That's all we know. We have two givens for that first situation. We don't know the total sum. We know that n is just n. We don't know the number of numbers, and we just know that the mean is 6. So we have to use what we have. So let's do that. Total sum divided by number of numbers equals the mean. Okay, fine. So what I did is I put in the mean. Total sum divided by n equals 6. Okay, now if you look at this, you can actually use it to figure out what the total sum is. I know we don't know this one and we don't know this one, but we can rearrange it and we can get something that is okay. Once you can get once you can get rid of stuff down here, It's really nice. So always, if you have like some fraction here, always try to get rid of the denominator. Just clean it up so everything's on the same level, because then what that will mean is we can have total sum equals something. We can get the definition of that total sum. We can say it equals something. It's not going to equal an exact number right now, but we can say that it does equal something, which is really, really useful. We can rearrange this to get a value for the total sum. Okay, so how do we rearrange it? Well, this is kind of just algebra. We have to isolate. We're trying to find total sum, so we're just going to isolate it. And this is kind of nice because we just have this denominator here, n. We just want to get rid of n. So total sum is being divided by n. So we do the reverse operation to cancel it out. So we say, okay, well, I'm just going to multiply this whole fraction thing by n. Therefore, it will cancel n out. So that's basic algebra. And then if you do one thing to one side, you have to do it to the other side as well. So there we go. We just kind of solved it and we got a definition. We got what our total sum originally is. The total sum is 6n. And there you go. And that actually makes really a lot of sense, because if you think about mean, what is mean? Mean is the average. If you have a bunch of numbers and you divide them by however numbers there are, that will give you the mean. So if you actually have the mean and you multiply the mean by the number of numbers, that will give you the total sum of those numbers. You can even try that. You could take 4 different numbers. You could take 4 different numbers. You could take whatever they add up to. You can add them up, and if they equal 20, you could do 20 divided by 4, and then you could get your mean, and then you could rearrange the equation, and you could do 4 times the mean, and that would give you 20. Okay, so actually, 20 divided by 4 is 5. 5, 10, 15, 20. Okay, so there we go. I have a bunch of numbers. I have 4 numbers. I have 4 numbers, and they all add up to 20. 4 numbers add up to 20. I divide them by 4 to get the average. The average of these numbers is 5. Okay, so if I take the average of the numbers and I multiply it by the amount of numbers I have, it will give me the total sum, which is 20. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. So therefore, our total sum originally for situation 1 is actually just 6n. And that's very, very helpful because we can use that. We only have one variable now, one unknown thing, and it's just the n. So now we can solve for n. We have just proved that the total sum of the numbers, the original total sum of numbers, is 6n. The new total sum is just the original total sum plus 17. The new n is n plus 1, and the new mean is 7. So again, here's our formula for situation 2. New total sum divided by new amount of numbers equals the new mean. And here we are filling everything in, plugging it all in. New total sum divided by new amount of numbers equals 7. So therefore 6n, because that's the original sum, total sum, plus 17, because we're adding 17 to the list. And we have our number of numbers plus 1, because we added 17 to our list. And the new mean is 7. This looks like a very nice equation. Now we can solve for n, because n is the only unknown variable here, and that's what we want. Now remember I said when you have like a fraction, you always want to clean it up. You always want to get things on the same line, so you want to get rid of this denominator. Always get rid of your denominator, and it's super easy. In every situation you can do this. All you have to do is take your denominator, because this numerator is being divided by the denominator, so all you have to do is multiply the fraction by your denominator, and then it will cancel out, and then you just do the same thing on the other side. So this is going to be a bit messy. I'll try to clean it up. Okay, I'll put n plus 1 here. You can just do that. You can put it kind of like in the middle or right beside, it's fine. It just has to be beside it to show that you're multiplying this whole fraction by n plus 1. That whole expression there, n plus 1, they cancel out. And then 7 has to be multiplied by n plus 1 as well, because you do one thing to one side, it must be done to the other. There you go, and that's it. And then you have 6n plus 17 equals 7 times n plus 1. And here we go. Here's a better looking version of it. I just canceled this out by multiplying the whole fraction by n plus 1, and I did it on the other side as well. And there we go. So we get rid of that thing. And now everything is nice and clean on one line. Beautiful. 6n plus 17 equals 7 times n plus 1. If we solve this, then this will get the answer. We have to use something, though, called the distributive property to expand and isolate n to find its value. What that means, distributive property is just when you have something, some math with brackets, and you have a number that is outside the brackets and you have stuff inside the brackets. So you just need to use the distributive property to kind of get rid of the brackets, to simplify things. How do you do that? You take this number outside and you just do this. You can draw little lines, little arrows. You multiply it by the first thing in that bracket, and then you multiply it by the second thing, the second term, I guess, in that bracket. So it would be 7 times n, which would be 7n, and then 7 times plus 1, which would be plus 7, or just 7. So there we go. 6n plus 17 equals 7n plus 1. I think I have this blank space here because I'm supposed to solve all this now. So I'll write it out. 6n plus 17 equals 7n plus 7. Okay, what do I do now? This is just simply an algebraic equation here. I just need to solve for n. Obviously, when you have a variable, you want to get the variables on the same side, and you want to get your whole numbers on the same side. So what can I do here? I will take my 6n and I will put it on the other side. So that means I'm going to get rid of it on this side. Now, a lot of students and teachers do this too. They say, okay, you can throw it to the other side. I used to throw, I don't throw anymore. I used to throw a lot, and then sometimes I would throw and things would get very confusing. I'd be throwing this way, throwing that way, and I would just get really confused. So I don't throw anymore. I just cancel out every single time. 6n here, I want to get rid of it on this side. So how do I do it? I just have a negative 6n. So you could write this out if you want to be really clear. You could do 6n minus 6n, because you always do the opposite operation. We have a 6n here, and this 6n is, if you think about it, it's a positive 6n. So if you just do negative 6n, if you subtract 6n, then it will cancel out. So there we go. We can do that. We can do 6n minus 6n. 6n minus 6n will give us nothing. It will cancel out. So I can just write 17 here. But I did that on the left side, so I have to do it on the right side as well. So there we go. I had brought in a minus 6n on the left side to cancel it out. So I'm bringing in a minus 6n on the right side to cancel it out. Okay, and we still have this plus 7. Obviously, we don't want it there. So how do we get rid of this plus 7? Well, you bring in a minus 7, a negative 7. So that cancels out. But we did one thing on the right side, so we have to do it on the left side as well. And I will just move this to make it easier. I will move it, and I will do my minus 7 here. There we go. And I can get rid of this. That's been canceled out. Okay, now we simplify. 17 minus 7 is 10. 7n minus 6n is 1n, which is the same thing as n, right? It's just n. Oh, so there we go. We've actually just solved it. N is equal to 10. And if you want, you can put the n on the other side. There we go. N is equal to 10. So 6n, here we go. I have it just written down here. 6n plus 17 equals 7n plus 7. What did I do? I made everything, all the like terms on their appropriate sides. So 17 minus 7, 7n minus 6n. It became 10 equals n, or therefore n equals 10. And that is it. That is how you solve that question. Knowing what is happening, what is the change, is really important. So think about what your first situation is and how does the first situation change to become the new situation, situation 2, and then use those changes to define your unknown variables. Use those changes to define the things you are looking for. So that is the answer to the question, and I just wanted to congratulate Shakib for going through it and getting the right answer, and for recently doing really well on his first quiz for grade 9 math. Really, really good stuff. Going to continue on here now to a different subject. We're going to look at English. Now, I've talked about this story, I think before in another update video. It's called Examination Day. It's a short story written in 1958 by Henry Slezar, and it's usually for a grade 7, grade 8 level for reading comprehension, but there is a question at the end of this story that I think can be applied at many different levels. So today I'm going to talk about understanding irony. In this story, we have a boy named Dickie. I'm not going to read the whole story, but I will go over it briefly. The main character, the protagonist, is named Dickie. It's his birthday, and his parents are there with him. They're sitting together, they're talking to him, and they're a bit agitated. His mom is very nervous and anxious, and his dad is kind of irritated and a bit frustrated. So what ends up happening is they tell him that it is his birthday. He's 12 years old today, but he's going to be taking an exam. So this is really interesting. If we look at the title, it's Examination Day, but it's also his birthday. So in this setting, everyone has to take a test at the age of 12, and we learned that it's a test given by the government. And the government, as they say in the story, they want to know how smart you are, basically. So I'll read this here. In this short science fiction story, a boy is required by the government to take an intelligence exam once he turns 12 years old. As you read, take notes on how the parents describe and react to the upcoming exam. So what happens is he eventually takes the exam, and his parents say, don't worry, there's nothing to worry about. And it gets a bit stranger and stranger, and we kind of think, oh, he's just doing an exam. His parents are worried, it makes sense, and he's kind of optimistic. He hopes he does well. And then at the end, we find out that he did very well on the exam. This employee of the government calls the family and says, yes, well, unfortunately, his intelligence is too high. And so you think, okay, well, that's weird. His intelligence is too high. And then they say, how would you like the body to be buried? And so we learn at the end that it was an intelligence test, and that in this setting, the government removes the people, kills the people who are above a certain intelligence level for some reason. So this question is all about irony. How does the author use irony to contribute to the story's message? Okay, so when we go through the worksheet, we learn that the message is basically that intelligence can be dangerous. And I try to tell students that intelligence can be dangerous because look what happened to Dickie. He had high intelligence and he got killed for it. But you could also see it the other way. Intelligence is deadly for the government as well. They used their intelligence to remove people that they didn't want in the society, possibly because if they were too smart, they would question things. So it's really interesting here. The irony is very apparent, but formulating a good answer about how the author uses the irony to contribute to the story's message is actually really quite difficult. Irony is a tool, it's a literary device. So someone could use irony in their writing to make the message, to make the theme become more obvious, almost become very visceral for the reader. It really shouts to the reader. They can really see it. So I've had a few students do this question, and I can see that it's difficult. And even for me, this is really difficult to just directly, logically answer. So what I've done is I've started going back to basics and just first asking simple questions, like defining the variables that we have. So here we go. What is irony? This is what I ask students. We have to learn what irony is first. And I have here, when the opposite of what is expected happens and results in a tragic or humorous consequences. So yeah, basically you don't expect something to happen and it does happen. I give the example, you go to work or school every day thinking that it might rain, so you take an umbrella, and then the day you don't take the umbrella is the day when it rains. Why is it used? So this all relates to the question, because the author is using irony. We have to know what it is. We have to know why we even use it in stories, in everything. So many things have irony in them. Why? And how does this help? How does it contribute? How does it make the story's message that more in your face? Okay, so why is it used? Well, briefly, to capture the reader's attention, and provoke an emotional response. I mean, that's pretty much it. In all stories, we want to keep the reader's attention. We don't want them to stop reading. So we have to make it interesting. And irony is a great tool to use to keep their attention. But you can keep their attention and you can also make them think. And how do you make people think? Well, a really good way to make people think and analyze things is to get them to have an emotional response. So now we move on. What is the message of this story? Okay, so I talked about this before. Intelligence can be deadly. It's deadly two ways. It's deadly for Dickie, it's deadly for the smart people, but it's deadly as a weapon because it can be used by the smart people, like the people in the government. Okay, what elements of the story contain irony? So this is, I think, very important. When we are doing literary analysis, we should really analyze the elements of the story because that's what the story is made up of. You want to get the building blocks of the story and you want to see the DNA of the story and what it's made up of. So we know that stories have a setting, they have characters, and they have a plot, and they have many other things, but I took these three because I thought these could be good examples. There is irony in all these three. So the setting, it's a world where intelligence is a bad thing. That's ironic because in our world, intelligence is a pretty good thing. We want to be intelligent. So that's ironic. It's like, oh, well, this is a world where intelligence is not a good thing to have. You don't want to have it because you could die from it. The government kills its people for being smart. The voice on the phone nonchalantly asks about Dickie's burial. So that's at the end of the story. They just kind of say, yeah, he did above normal. Do you want his body interred or would you like a private burial? Okay, next, the characters. Dickie is curious and intelligent, which means his fate is doomed. So again, this is also ironic. This is kind of unexpected. He's curious, he's intelligent, he's really energetic, optimistic. He wants to please his parents, and that means he will get killed. So he's doing everything right, and that seals his fate. Also, the parents, it's kind of ironic that they are willingly sending him to a test knowing that he could die doing that test. They encourage him to go do the test. Okay, the plot. Well, the main thing here, it's ironic because he's taking an exam and he does well on an exam, so therefore he is killed. The test leads to Dickie's death. So those are three elements of the story. We've got this weird setting, this place where intelligence is actually a bad thing. We've got characters who, because of their character traits, their fate is doomed. And we've got the plot, which is basically there's an ironic twist, plot twist. It's not what you would expect to happen if someone does well on a test. Okay, so now we know that. We know where the irony is located in the story. So that's good. We found that. But how do these uses of irony contribute to the message? That's the main part of the question here. So we've got what irony is. We've got where it is. And now we have to figure out how it actually helps the story's message get passed along. So I chose two things here. I chose the plot and the character. The plot twist engages the reader. It makes them think about the message. So it really engages you. I had a student who was reading it, and at the very end, we learned that just by this phone call to the parents that Dickie has been killed because his intelligence is too high. And I had a student who read that and went, wait, well, I have to go back and read it again. It kind of makes you do a double take. You have to go back. It's a big plot twist. And that really engages the reader. And it makes them think, wow, what just happened? Why would this happen? So they do feel emotions like shock and disbelief. This forces them to rethink, to reread and think. And that's true because in the story, we kind of relate to Dickie. He's doing a test. His parents are nervous. They are a bit stressed. I think we've all been through this type of situation where we have to take a test or an exam and we hope we do well. We want to please our parents, all these things. And so the reader is taken along and then the main character is savagely ripped away from the story just from a secondhand experience of someone talking to someone else on the phone. Okay, next, the character. So the character trait of being intelligent equals death. That's pretty ironic. So you are intelligent, you die. Okay, that's not what you would expect. This contradiction makes the reader examine our common held belief that intelligence is good and something to strive for. So it makes you rethink or re-examine the belief that intelligence is good and something to strive for. Because now you're thinking, wait, wow, I had no idea that intelligence could be viewed this way. So let's go back to the question. How does the author use irony to contribute to the story's message? I'm going to answer the question as directly and logically as I can. And obviously, students with different levels, different age groups, will answer it in a different way. And I don't care about super incredible academic and flowery language. I just care about the structure being good and the ideas being there. And I use something called the APE method. I know a lot of schools these days use PEEL, point, evidence, explanation, and then link. That's fine. I use PEEL a lot because for me it just works. It's answer the question, provide some evidence, and explain it. Or answer the question, provide some evidence, and end it nicely. And here my E is kind of ending it. So this is my answer to this question. This is a short answer question. My answer is a bit long. I'm happy if students just choose one thing, one element of the story and talk about that. Okay. The author uses irony to contribute to the meaning of the story by engaging the reader's curiosity with riveting plot developments and consequences of character traits. So I provide some evidence here. As the story develops, the reader engages with the all too common situation of having to take a test. Dickie's parents are noticeably agitated, while Dickie maintains a boyish optimism, hoping to do well. The ironic twist proves emotionally shocking for the reader and forces us to engage with the fact that in this world, doing well on a test exposes the deadly consequences of intelligence. Okay, so there we go. The irony is in the plot, and that makes the reader really focus in, they get emotionally invested, and they think about this theme that intelligence can have deadly consequences. Moving on, the ironic contradiction between character traits and situational outcomes also reveals the story's potent message. So now I'm going into my topic sentence is all about the character traits, but I link it back to the plot, the situational outcomes, and say that that also reveals the message. Dickey is shown to be a curious and persistent learner with his constant questions, and many readers may relate to his desire to do well on the test in order to please his parents. However, this steadfast demeanor, so this kind of, he's really, he's got a good head on his shoulders, he's honest, he's, just a strong, reliable, responsible kid. This steadfast demeanor consequently leads to his demise and makes us rethink our common belief that intelligence is valuable. By upsetting this paradigm, the author is forcing us to rethink how we interpret one's own aptitude. Okay, so here it's all about how the author is making us think, wow, okay, so this character trait, being curious, intelligent, wanting to do well, it's not a good thing here. And then I just tried to wrap this all up. The author's use of irony mends its way within the plot and characters of the story. So I'm restating my kind of thesis statement there, and makes for an emotional roller coaster, which gives the reader a harsh reminder. Intelligence can be deadly. So I'm restating everything, talking about how it's in the plot and the characters of the story, how it's the emotional response is kind of drawing people in, giving them a reminder, and then there's the message right there, intelligence can be deadly. Okay, so in preparing students, in helping them write answers to these types of questions, because I think there's lots of different exams and worksheets and literary analysis assignments that are very similar. They ask how some type of tool is used to get the message across. I think that's a very common question and a really important thing for everybody to understand how to do. So my preparation was to help students kind of attack any question like this, really analyze the story and see what the writer is doing and then make sense of it and logically give an answer. So I then was doing some research, getting some materials, and I saw this excerpt from the book How to Read and Why by Harold Bloom, who's a great writer and professor and scholar, wrote a lot about Shakespeare and literature, and it was on irony, so I think it's really good, and I include this in the worksheet that I do with students. I'll just read it here. Irony demands a certain attention span and the ability to sustain antithetical ideas, even when they collide with one another. Strip irony away from reading, and it loses at once all discipline and all surprise. Find now what comes near to you that can be used for weighing and considering, and it very likely will be irony, even if many of your teachers will not know what it is or where it is to be found. Irony will clear your mind of the cant of the ideologues and help you to blaze forth as the scholar of one candle. So he wrote this when he was older. Going on 70, one doesn't want to read badly any more than live badly, since time will not relent. I don't know that we owe God or nature a death, but nature will collect anyway. And we certainly owe mediocrity nothing, whatever collectively it purports to advance or at least represent. Because my ideal reader for half a century has been Dr. Samuel Johnson, I turn next to my favorite passage in his preface to Shakespeare. This, therefore, is the praise of Shakespeare, that his drama is the mirror of life, that he who has mazed his imagination in following the phantoms which other writers raise up before him, may here be cured of his delirious ecstasies by reading human sentiments in human language. by scenes from which a hermit may estimate the transactions of the world and a confessor predict the progress of the passions. Okay, and there we go. That's the end of this update for February. Just to recap, ReEd is a nonprofit providing educational content and classes to help students develop resilient skills for the future. The main aim is to become successful, to become a successful organization providing free classes for anyone. And lastly, a video clip of a professor talking about learning in the age of AI. I will just include this at the end of the video.
The AI is advancing so fast. With my own kids, I have 3 kids. I'm a math professor at Carnegie Mellon University. I'm not even sure what's going to happen to university. In fact, actually, I'm going to say as a parent, I don't really even care too much if all of my children go to university. Because I think that at this point, by the time they go to university, boy, the world will be so different that the most important skill that you could have is that ability to synthesize your own idea. I interview lots and lots of high school students who want to work with me. And during the interview, the way that I interview is I ask them questions until it's very clear from their body language that they have never seen this question before. I wait until it's really clear that they've never seen this before. And then I want to see how you think. The expectation is that you won't solve it. And so then I start to give hints. And then I want to see how quickly can you synthesize them into a solution for a problem you have never seen before. Actually, that's also creativity. The only unique thing about human intelligence is that we hopefully care that humans still exist. The creativity in the AI can probably surpass what we can do too. In schools, one of the biggest places where students are using AI to cheat on their homework is for their writing. This, unfortunately, could make a huge problem for human civilization. Because you just have to think, what is that AI anyway? It's a large language model. How is that AI so good? It's because it's good at language. It's good at looking at the patterns of words that often appear. If many kids lose this ability, we'll get many kids who grow up and aren't able to think logically. All they're able to do is just take whatever anyone else gives them. They'll just be dependent. If you're already grown up and you already have that skill and you're using the AI to achieve that task because that's for your job, great, okay, you're using it to do a job. But if you're in school, why are you doing that writing? It's not because the writing you make is going to make money directly. No, that writing is actually part of your own learning. Using AI to do your writing homework in school is like saying, I'm not going to run a mile for exercise, I'm going to drive my car 1 mile for exercise. How much exercise you get? You get none. You're going to grow up and you're not going to be able to be as physically fit. Similar thing here with mentally fit. And just this observation that the power of the large language model is the language. That's why we need to really make sure that all of our kids, and if you're watching this and you're students, this is why you need to be really, really good with language. For the next generation, all of these skills like reading and writing, communication, logic, these are all going to be very important because these are how you develop a good way to think.